A couple of days ago, I made a video on DC characters that deserve live action films or shows, and I've decided to go right down that same path, except this time we're going to be talking about characters or groups of characters that deserve an animated project. When you're a fan of these types of brands and IPs in comic books, it can be very important to have animated projects for the fans. I do believe animation can be tough for a lot of the general audience to get into. Now, that's not to say it's impossible, but it's certainly not as easy as it would be if a project was live action. So very often, I personally am in the belief system that if you're making an animated project, you are specifically making it for the people who are fans of DC. Just like the previous video, I gave you 8 characters, and I am going to do the same here. So let's start with my first choice in Wonder Woman. I'm telling you right now, this was one of the easiest ones to choose from, and also I could guarantee you that 80 to 90% of DC fans would probably say the same thing. Yes, Wonder Woman has appeared in many DC animated projects. She's also had her own animated film, but she is one of the Trinity who has never had an animated television show. I think it's very important that, once again, Wonder Woman, a member of the Trinity, is capable of standing on her own 2 feet and having her own animated series. Times have changed. Characters are different. Comic books never stay the same, not for long. I understand if you might not want to believe Wonder Woman is truly the 3rd most popular character in DC Comics, you might look elsewhere. However, I still believe that Wonder Woman as a character and what the inception of her creation meant for DC all those years ago, stretching to today, she's extremely important, and she deserves one. I have Plastic Man next. Now, a very interesting thing about this character is I never really realized how many passionate or diehard fans there were of the character, or who simply wants to see him in some sort of movie or show. I didn't start seeing it until I made a Plastic Man unpopular opinion video, and even mentioned Plastic Man in other videos over the past couple of weeks and months. I know that very likely the growing consensus is Plastic Man in live action, show, movie, or maybe even featuring in someone else's film. There are quite a couple of really good actors I could personally see playing the role as well, and that could still happen. However, I think an animated show, either on top of live action appearances or just animation on its own, suits this character perfectly. Probably the toughest part about doing Plastic Man is going to be the financial state of doing special effects and CGI on what this character is capable of. If you do it in cartoon form, you could probably get away with what he can do much easier, much more simple, and also with the tone of the show, if you need something a little more comedic, he would be your escape for that. I also have Birds of Prey. Now, this is also another concept that could easily be live action, but it could just as easily be animation. I don't know how well a Birds of Prey live action project would actually do with a general audience, but with an animated movie or show, this would be a perfect opportunity to dive into some of the characters that belong in the Birds of Prey that you wouldn't so easily be able to do in any other circumstance. And there's always 2 things to remember: that when you're doing an animated movie, you're putting these characters on a much bigger scale. It's become far more important what the plot is actually going to be about and what they're trying to solve. When you do a TV show, you can still make episodes very important, but the advantages you're getting here is that you get to dive into these characters a little bit more, especially the Birds of Prey characters that not everyone really knows about or has read about. And I would personally be okay with either one, movie or show. There is quite a lot of options you could take here. You could do Batgirl, Huntress, and Black Canary, or you could make Barbara Gordon Oracle. You could then bring in another Batgirl, which would be Cassandra Cain. You could also have Hawk and Dove. There are a lot of different ways you could model this team, and it all depends on how many characters you would actually want part of it. That is also not to say that over time they don't expand their team, because they 100% would. I have another team-up animated project here, Red Hood and the Outlaws. Now, I know a lot of people found this team to be a little controversial in New 52, and a big reason for that was because of how they handled Starfire. But in Rebirth, a lot more people have warmed up to this team. An animated project with these characters could do some of them wonders, especially someone like Red Hood. Very often we just see simply as being a character who is heavily against Batman's way of crime fighting, if you will. He's someone who wants to take matters in his own hands, and he's also a character that a lot of people are not comfortable with him being a member of the Bat family. We would be able to watch Red Hood be the leader of his own team that he was created, and how that changes him as a person. What makes him different now? When you look at Artemis, somebody who has a connection to Wonder Woman, but of course is not quite Wonder Woman. Being able to expand the lore that comes from the side of Wonder Woman, instead of always just giving you characters that are from Batman or Superman side. Now, I do believe this show would be able to give a little bit of an excuse to be a little more violent. I'm not saying Red Hood and some of these other characters are going to kill people, at least not all of the time, but it is a way to show the difference between how some characters operate in the DC world. There are some characters who try to abstain from killing, and there are some characters who will kill if they have to, as long as the threat has failed and the job is done. Next is Blue Beetle, which I know he has had a movie as of recently, but in all transparency, I was not a fan of the film at all. Outside of that, I do believe animation for this character at this time is probably the best route to go. Maybe rushing Blue Beetle into a live action film was not the greatest of ideas. There are still some fans of DC who really don't care about this character, and the general audience had absolutely no idea who he was. Blue Beetle is also a character that you could get children heavily invested in, and then years down the line they look back at it and say, this show is why I like Blue Beetle so much. It's the same way for me when I look back at Batman the Animated Series, and as I watched it over time, I realized why I loved it so much and why I love Batman today. I also see Blue Beetle being very well suited for animation. Jaime Reyes as a person, the Scarab, what it's capable of doing, how it would translate to animation. Also, the fact this was a big selling point for me in this decision. Blue Beetle does not have the best villains out there. None of them are very memorable. You could use animation as an excuse for writers of a Blue Beetle animated show creating new villains for the character, and then that way writers could watch this show and start utilizing those villains in future comic book runs. Some of the best and popular created characters come from animated projects. Look at Harley Quinn. I also have Green Lantern. There was an animated Green Lantern series that got canceled after one season. It was poorly received. Its toy sales weren't doing well at all, and they couldn't keep the show going. However, I don't think they should stop trying. The world of Green Lanterns is far too expansive to just leave it at that. I do believe it is one of the biggest and most unique areas of the DC universe that it could utilize all three at the same time. Give us a Green Lantern movie. Give us a Green Lantern live action show. Give us a Green Lantern animated series all at the same time. And to make it different, to make it feel like it's not all the same, you could use people like Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart for live action projects. For animation, you could use other characters, say like Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner, Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz. Or you could even go crazier and just use alien characters. How I imagine they would handle it is like Star Wars Clone Wars. Every couple of episodes, you would be dealing with different characters, different storylines, different worlds, different aliens. These seasons can branch off and give you multiple stories, all while finding a way to arc into one mega story by also showcasing many different characters that the Green Lantern Corps has to offer. Now, I also put Justice League International as a candidate for an animated project, whether it be movie or show, but personally, I think I would side with more so of an animated series. The phenomenal Justice League animated series that eventually turned into Justice League Unlimited, it really showed that an animated TV show could exist, showcasing other DC characters part of a Justice League that didn't always rely on Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the rest of the main seven, even though they did show up from time to time. With Justice League International, you would be able to take some of these next man up type characters who then take their place as a different form of a Justice League. This could also call in for some crossovers. Maybe every now and then a Flash pops up into this team, or a Wonder Woman, or a Batman. Also trying to showcase to a lot of comic book lovers, or maybe even the few general audience members who do watch animation, the main Justice League is not the only Justice League DC has to offer. They have many different forms of Justice League teams in their universe. And then last, but certainly not least, I decided to go with Green Arrow, another character who is just recently coming off a live-action television series that lasted 8 years. That was another show I was not a fan of at all, and I couldn't last more than 2 seasons. It got to the point where they realized Batman sells, and they just tried to simply make Arrow Batman in a different costume with different weapons. A Green Arrow animated project would be able to full out show you what Green Arrow really is. In fact, all you need to do is take Green Arrow from the Justice League Unlimited series and make an entire show off of that version of him. I know live action projects can be seen as king. There have been a lot of people over the years who have been begging for a Green Arrow movie. There is even a Green Arrow movie script that exists and was actually supposed to shoot, and it never got made. You would be able to really dive into who Green Arrow is, the villains that surrounds him, and what his city is like. Just for example, say you had a Birds of Prey animated show going along the same time of Green Arrow. You could see Black Canary bounce between both shows. So there you go, guys. There are some DC characters or groups of characters that I believe deserve animated movies or animated series. Now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments below other characters you believe deserve animated projects as well. But that is all I have for you on this one, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.